Well, good morning, guys.
What's up?
What's up, Graham?
And this is Quinn.
We realize this is our first time doing this.
This
together,
is our
man.
first time doing this
What do you
together,
think,
my
buddy?
man. I'm really stoked. I'm so happy
Well,
to
just
be.
give it time. We'll screw
come
it up.
on. Come on.
Welcome to our different locations, AJ's and Crab Island online. Man, so glad to be here with you guys today.
All the locations. All
those locations. So this is our second week in the series that we're doing called Should I Stay or Should I Go? Hence the cups and the vernacular where we're looking through a story of Jonah. But
should I stay or should I go? I feel like that's a pretty common question to ask in lots of different situations.
Yeah, for sure.
I've definitely asked that question in a few points in my life. There was this one time when I was 8 or 9 that I was asking that question.
I can already tell there's going to be a good life lesson.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So my mom was determined that at 8 or 9 years old that I still needed to go to the restroom in the women's restroom with her in order to be safe. I was convinced she was wrong. So in that,
I agree with you.
Okay.
Unless your mom's watching, I agree with you. I'm
We're saying-
Enneagram 9,
we're
so I
saying the
gotta agree with
same thing.
everybody. Right? Yeah.
So anyway, I was asking, should I stay and say no to mom, or should I go and do what she was asking me to do?
What'd you do?
I went into a women's restroom this time. And so, oh man. So,
buddy.
I'm in the stall and I'm like, I'm just going crazy because, like, how am I going to get out of the stall so nobody sees me?
Right. Are there air conditioning?
Are there
vents?
exactly?
Right.
And then my mom decides to leave before me. So as she's walking out, she yells, "Quinn, don't forget to wash your hands." So then it's like,
And they know there's no girl named Quinn.
that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's, well, should I wash my hands or should I not wash my hands? I wash my hands because
in the toilet bowl.
Oh,
Smart.
I
dude.
should have done that, but I didn't. So anyway, I'm doing the hand washing. I'm like making sure there's no ladies around, and I book it to the front door. I grab the door handle and I'm opening. And as I do, my classroom crush is on her way in the bathroom.
Of course she is.
Should I stay or should I go?
Well, you know what? There's no lesson in that.
There's really no lesson in that. I'm sorry.
Should you have gone? No. but when you went, should you have stayed? No. Yeah, that's the worst of both
That
worlds.
literally has nothing
Bad
to do.
story.
Bad story. It literally has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Sorry.
But we are talking about this word called reluctance, which we can connect to that story.
Yes, I was very reluctant.
And last week we talked about the difficult assignments that we feel we have in our life that even maybe we feel God is kind of nudging us to, and how many times we're reluctant for that. So recap of week 1. If you didn't listen to it, go back and listen to the message.
Please check it out. It's awesome.
But we said there's a guy named Jonah. Jonah is a prophet, meaning his job is essentially to hear from God and then communicate God's message to the people. This is 750 years before Jesus.
He's actually really popular. He's like well known for this, right?
Right, yeah.
Not just a random guy on the street.
Exactly. He's employee of the month like 4 different times in the prophet guild.
That'd be kind of cool, I guess, right?
So God gives Jonah this mission and says, I want you to go to the city of Nineveh and essentially tell them that the way that they're living, what they're doing is not at all what I want for them. And the problem is that Nineveh is a dangerous place. It is a place that Jonah knows I'll probably be tortured and killed there. So he goes down to the port, right, where you sail, and instead of going to Nineveh, he goes the opposite direction to a place called Tarshish and just says, forget that, right? As he's sailing to Tarshish, which is a heck of a journey, there's this huge storm that comes up on the boat, and not like, oh, this rain is annoying. Like everyone thought they were going to die.
This is like a hurricane. This is like...
In fact, the scripture says it threatened to break the ship apart.
Whoa.
And so they bail on the cargo, which is the only reason for the ship. Everyone's just preparing for death. And they go to Jonah and they say, dude, what? Like, who are you? Like, what's going? This is a supernatural thing, right? And so Jonah essentially tells them, I know why this storm is happening, and it's because I'm running away from what God has for me.
Oh, man. I would have been so mad if I were those guys on the ship.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Jonah. Yeah, I thought you were employee of the month. And so they say, all right, Jonah, like, what can we do to stop the storm?
Right.
And Jonah says, you got to throw me into the ocean. Well, these guys are like, that sounds like a horrible idea. And so they try to row even harder.
That's like being in a car, like, and say, listen, guys, you got to throw me out of the car in order for this thing to go right.
Well,
Wow,
now that I have read Jonah, if anyone ever says that to me, I'm throwing them out of the car. Even if they misspeak, I'm jumping at every opportunity to throw somebody out of the car. So they throw Jonah over the side. And as soon as they do, this storm stops. And I thought, man, there is this introspective moment by Jonah to recognize kind of how far he has descended. He started as this guy who had this cool connection with God, and his job was to listen to God and then communicate that to people and how cool that is. And then God gives him this mission that I'm sure God is like, dude, this is an even cooler bond. And he runs away from that. And then as he's going away, he begins to be more and more callous towards what God is giving him. And then he gets to this point where now his crew has kind of bailed on him. And he's thinking to himself, all right, can't get any worse than this. Like, this is the worst it could possibly get. Then enter the whale.
Enter the whale. I think it's really funny that you use the word descend, because he really does go to like a bad, dark, deep place, right?
Yeah, he does.
In the whale.
Yeah. And so this whale comes by, swallows him up. And the verse that in Jonah 2:1, the first one we're going to read, says, from inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. And we talked about this week 1, but in the story, up until this point, everybody has prayed but Jonah. The crew has prayed, the captain has prayed, the whale's probably prayed, right? Everybody's prayed, but Jonah hasn't. And it takes this moment where he is inside the fish that he's finally willing to talk to God. What I wanted to camp on just for a second is this phrase, inside the fish. What does it mean to be inside the fish? And I think being inside the fish means feeling that you are the furthest possible place from what God intends for you.
Yeah, kind of like, for those of you that might be into literature, or, you know, there's this guy named Joseph Campbell that talks about this thing called the hero's journey. Sometimes the words dark night of the soul or the abyss are also pretty applicable. But I love the inside the fish concept, because that's what's going on with Jonah.
You got to a point where like it can't get worse, and then you experience, oh no, this is the absolute.
This is way worse.
So if you're watching this, who knows? I'm sure maybe now, maybe before, you've had something that's felt inside the fish. Maybe it's your marriage. Maybe it's, I guess your job could be, you know, just you feel stuck in what you're doing. Maybe for you, it's even just your relationship with God feels inside the fish. You just felt like there's no way, if I hear God talk about a vibrant life, then this cannot be at all what God has intended for me.
Wow.
I've got a cousin. Seems like I'm always talking about my cousins, but one of my cousins wrestled with addiction for a number of years, actually wrestled with heroin addiction. And he told me a story talking about being inside the fish, where he said he used to go to this dog park, and he would meet his dealer there every week, and dealer would give him the stuff. He would essentially shoot up, and then he would sit against this one tree in the dog park in this daze, and he would watch these couples walk by with their dogs. And in his mindset, he was like, their lives are just perfect. Even more than that, he saw the gap between where he was and them as insurmountable. Like this is impossible for me to ever, that can never be my life.
Wow.
You know, I used to watch the show Hoarders. Have you ever seen that show?
Yeah, definitely.
I used to watch it just from a psychological point, but you know, you'd see these houses that were in such disarray. And if somebody said, hey, clean up your house, you'd be like, dude, I don't even know where to start. Like there's not a couple micro adjustments. This feels impossible. This feels hopeless, unable to change. And so if you have something that feels like that inside the fish, you feel like, I'm so far away, I don't even know what steps, you know, to take to get back.
You know what's interesting about that is all of that starts with Jonah's very slight reluctance to do what he was told to do.
Yeah.
And I think all of us experience this kind of reluctance
Mhm.
where if we're not careful, reluctance will lead us farther and farther and farther away
Totally.
from God. Reluctance actually breeds passivity, and passivity always escalates.
Yep.
You know, like what ends up happening is if we're talking about God, you know, like if we're not pursuing him, if we're not saying yes, we're ultimately walking away from him.
Right.
It's either yes or away.
That's good. And we don't think
Yeah.
that, right? We think that reluctance just means everything's fine. We're just reluctant to the top 5%. But that
Right.
transcendent mindset or characteristic of
Mm.
reluctance leads the way. Let's take that marriage example, right?
Right.
The marriage example says if there's a gap of communication in your marriage and you don't address that gap of communication,
Mm.
you don't plateau.
Right.
You don't stay fine, your marriage deteriorates,
Right.
right? If you don't communicate. And so the same thing, your relationship with God. If you're not addressing the gap in communication, it's not like, oh, you plateau. It's
Right.
kind of, at least emotionally and mentally and spiritually, it's either towards Nineveh, towards God, or it's towards Tarshish.
Yeah, I mean, you're either running towards your marriage, you're running towards your kids, or you're running away. And if that's true about those kinds of relationships, then it's absolutely true about God. I'm either running toward God or I'm running away from him.
Yep.
And what's incredible is that when reluctance happens, what we're actually doing in that space with reluctance is we're revering something more than we're revering God.
That's good.
And so in that space is where Jonah was. He was, as you were talking about, slowly descending to the deepest, darkest parts of himself,
Mhm.
and he was descending away from God. What's interesting about that whole process is when Jonah's on the boat, right? And the crew is like going crazy, trying to figure out what to do with this storm. Jonah is asleep
Hmm.
below deck.
Yep.
And that's really significant to me, that reluctance can breed passivity, which means that we can get to a place of feeling numb, maybe depressed, maybe so confused that we're frozen in time. And so when the captain comes down to wake Jonah up, and I bet he was so frustrated with this guy,
Yeah.
right?
That's pretty conservative with the word frustrated. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we see though is that Jonah reveres his own comfort. He starts to choose reluctance, choose being numb, choose being passive, and he reveres it so much that he reveres his comfort over God.
Right. And you're right, which makes us self-absorbed. Right.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, the first thing is that Jonah reveres his comfort over God. The second is that Jonah reveres his way over God's way. So ultimately, when God says, go to Nineveh, and Jonah goes, all right, just logically, God, Nineveh wants to kill me.
Right.
Tarshish doesn't. This makes more sense.
Right.
Right. And so we
Let's stay where it's
think that
comfortable.
so many
Yeah.
times with, if God calls us to something, we go, look, God, just logically, I know it feels good.
Right.
Right. Let's make sense of this thing
Right.
because we want to control that. And so we fall into that. The problem is, and we talked about it last week, is the more times I try to logic or put myself or prioritize my way over God's way, the more times I ignore what God is calling me to, the more callous I become when God talks. Just think about it this way. When I go to a playground, which I do all the time because I got 3 kids, and which is just a huge mistake, by the way. If you ever think of having 3 kids, don't do that. Oh no, it's terrible. But anyway,
You don't mean that.
I don't mean that, man. They're a lie to my life. But
Yeah.
we're at the playground, and I can always hear them screaming because cowgirls can find something to scream about. But I can fully recognize my kids' yells or voice or screams because I'm around them all the time, right? But if I went, maybe not a week, but a month, 3 months, a year, a few years
Right.
without being around them, I'm betting that their voices would just kind of blend in with the other voices from the playground.
Right.
Because I'm not in tune to what their voices are. And I
Right.
thought for us, the way that we hear from God who is trying to speak words of encouragement
Mm.
and guidance and building us up, right? And convicting us in the most beautiful way to live this life that he wants to give to us. If we go a month, 3 months, a year, a few years without really spending time, like leaning in to what he has for us, then what happens is his voice kind of joins the other voices in society. He becomes one of the voices we hear, and we all know that society's voice for us is not uplifting.
You know, that really makes me think of two different kinds of people. There's people sometimes that we look at that are following God and we think they should know what to do, but because they're not actually listening to him properly, they're not doing what God has for them. They're not on purpose people. And sometimes there's a second group of people that
maybe they've gotten their mission ahead of what God's mission is. Right?
Exactly. They've gotten their mission ahead of what God's mission is. And then the second group of people, for those of you who are saying, I have to be a professional person, a professional Christian to hear the voice of God, I just want to encourage you that is absolutely not true. That God is wanting to speak to you right where you're at in the circumstances that you're in because he loves you and he's eager to show you that he loves you. And that just because you don't know everything, it doesn't mean that you can't stop and ask God to speak with you. Because here's this guy named Jonah who's supposed to know everything, and he didn't.
Right. He's got the business card that says prophet. And now let's look at what happens. The crew's response, right?
So eventually Jonah tells the crew, hey, you've got to throw me off the boat to make this right. And so they do. And when they do, the storm subsides. And it says that at this, in Jonah 1:15-16, at this, the men greatly feared the Lord. They offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. Some of you have been in a situation where maybe you were at the beginning of your relationship with God and you said, God, I need you. Can you show up for me? And he did. And the first thing that you have to show him, to give back to him, is gratitude. And that's exactly what these guys did. I can look at my own story, and there were moments in my life that if you would have looked at my past, you would think, oh, he's been a Christian for a long time. He's been in the church. He should know the answers. And there was a moment in my life where even with all of that, I was searching for answers, and I was in a really, really dark place. And I needed someone to show me simple love. And in fact, that ended up being my wife. When we first met, I'd found God a little earlier than she did. And so maybe I had a lot more knowledge, but she was actually wise in the Lord with her love. And so when I was trying to figure out how to become an adult, what job to choose, having panic attacks on the regular, feeling like I might harm myself. And I was asking her, why would you want to be with me? Why should you stay with me? Her response is, because God told me to love you. How powerful is that? That sometimes it's the simple choices that we make because we hear God's voice that we might not be able to look in the Bible and map it out, with some, Christianese language or theology or whatever you want to call it. And so here these guys, they don't know anything, but they're listening to the voice of God by throwing Jonah back over the boat, and he answers.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that point where it sounded like, at least in that moment, you were inside the fish, right?
Yes,
at least
absolutely.
mentally. Because Jonah 1:17, now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Back to our starting verse, Jonah 2:1. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from inside the fish. And here's what I want to bring up, is that finally Jonah connects with God. He has this moment where he goes, oh, I was revering the wrong thing. I was fearing I was prioritizing the wrong thing. I thought I was supposed to fear and revere Nineveh. I thought I was supposed to fear and revere the mission. I thought I was supposed to fear or revere my comforts. Turns out that what I need to revere is God, because God is who wants what's best for me, right? That's the shift that happens. Now, a lot of us who have felt inside the fish, or you're currently inside the fish, what happens is God starts to nudge you in that, and you think to yourself, okay, you feel I couldn't be further from God, right? You feel so disconnected, so distant from God. Here's what you need to know. In the middle of that moment, in the middle of when you feel inside the fish, remember this. God is an eager God.
Right. Yes.
God is an eager God. And think about that word eager. Just for us. Think about the last time you felt eager about something, right? Not reluctant, but eager. I think that we all enter this world very eager, and we have these big dreams and we go for things and we're just like, oh man, world is our oyster and nothing bad could happen. Then what happens?
Right.
Reality happens, right? The first crush that you have walks in on you when you're in the girls' bathroom.
No!
Hypothetically.
No!
Or, you study for a test, you actually study for it and then fail it, right? Or the job goes to somebody else.
Right.
Or maybe for you, it's even like you've prayed for something over and over and over and over, and you've never seen it happen. And it has affected you in such a way that you're inside the fish. And what happens is instead of being eager because of reality, because we get beaten down and worn down, what happens is instead of being eager, we are now in this like self-preservation bubble and we're just surviving. Right. It just feels like we're reluctant.
It makes me think with your point about God being eager to connect with us, God being eager to love us. It makes me think of if we go back to that playground analogy, and one of your kids is crying out because something's about to happen. They're about to get hurt. Maybe they're about to fall off the playground. You as a dad, if you hear their voice and you know what it sounds like when they're in trouble, you are eager to get over there and make sure to scoop them up, to pick them up when they fall.
No, that's good. And God is not saying, oh, what's he crying about now?
Right.
God is eager to connect with you. And so I want to encourage you that in the face of our reluctance, God is eager to love.
That's right. And I'd love to go ahead and take it even a step further. If you look in Jonah 3:1-2, it says, then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. I love that part where it talks about the second time, because what that says to me is that God is the God of second chances. He told Jonah to do it once and Jonah ran away. He didn't, when Jonah didn't and he was at his lowest point, God doesn't say, okay, man, you had a rough day. I understand you need to throw in the towel. Go back home. No, God says, hey, man, get back in the game. I've got a mission for you. I've got a purpose for you. Here's a second chance just for you. Let's do this. And so God is eager to connect with us. He's eager to love us, and he's eager to reinstate his reluctant children. When we are reluctant, he's ready to give us that second chance. The way through is the way through, and he's the God that makes a way through.
That's good.
Yes. I love also, I've heard people say things like, oh, God never gives you more than you can handle. The truth is that God's purposes, his missions are more than we can handle, but he gives us those missions and those purposes because he wants us to rely on him to get through it. And he's, again, eager to help us get through it.
Yeah, so the mission that he gives Jonah this time, and admittedly, we don't know Jonah's mindset, why he accepts this time.
Right.
We don't know, but we do know that he accepts this time. Goes to the port, goes to Nineveh. And actually, he goes and announces this message like God told him, saying, hey, God has more for you. Like this isn't what God intends for you. By the way, Nineveh, it was called a great city because of its size. It was so big that him preaching this message of judgment to the city took him 3 days.
3
Which is more than just
days.
Yelling, God's judgment, peace, I'm out of here.
It makes me wonder, like, how many times a day for 3 days did he preach the message?
Yeah, dude.
Can you imagine that? What if you had to share this message like...
Dude, for 3 days, you got a meal prep? Right? You probably got a carbo
He's
load.
like eating and like sharing the message.
Oh yeah, he's got his
Hey,
Tupperware.
God, love you.
So the point is, it was a thing. Like it was an ordeal, right? It wasn't just, hey, I say something, I'm out. This is a scary thing, but he does it, and one of the greatest miracles maybe in human history is
Mm.
that Jonah 3:5, the Ninevites believed God.
So he transforms the city. And what's amazing on the back end is he gets transformed too.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
It's a twofer.
It's a twofer.
To go on, the Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth, and sackcloth was just like a sign of mourning and submission.
Wow.
And the reminder in that is that, everyone focuses on Jonah in this story because that's what the book's called. But God is eager to reach Nineveh. Nineveh was the worst of the worst. Who is that person that you are thinking impossible, beyond reach? Maybe you think that's yourself. That you're like, no, not me. Not after what I've done.
Right.
And God is not just reluctant to reach you. God is not just, okay, fine, come on, but take the last seat in the bus. He is saying, I am eager. I am eager to reach you. I'm eager to reconnect with my child.
Wow. So it's kind of like this is about the person that knows God but's reluctant to do what he wants him to do, is actively running away. And this is from the person that totally doesn't know that they're doing the wrong thing.
Yep.
They need God just as much as the guy who knows God, a little bit about God.
Yep, exactly.
That's powerful.
Yeah, last week we said, if God's giving you a difficult assignment, like what is that? Let's learn to articulate it.
Right.
And I think that there's probably 3 different camps of people watching, if you're kind of willing to explore what God's given you. First camp says this. First camp says, you know what? The reason I don't go for it is because it's too difficult, and I'm going to continue to ignore it. And you've just said Tarshish for me, away from what God's calling me to again. Second camp says, you know what? I'm going to go for this. I see it as valuable. You went for it, and what happened? Exactly what you feared happened. And you fell into the same pitfall, the same snag, and you said, nope, okay, I gave it a try, but now I'm going to Tarshish. The third says, you know what? This is such a worthwhile thing for me that though I haven't done it before, I'm going to fight for it this time.
Wow.
And what happens when you get in that fight? You honestly probably realize it was even harder than you thought it would be.
Wow.
For all 3, I want to tell you this, that God has not given up on you.
That's right. Yeah.
For all 3, whether you ignored it again, you went for it and bailed, or you're still in the fight, God is so eager not just to connect with you, but to reinstate that mission. He gave you that mission not so that you would fail. He gave you that mission so that you would connect deeper with him, and that people could be changed. Eternity could be changed because of the difficult assignment that he's given you. You know, my cousin that I talked about earlier, I talked to him about a year ago, and love that guy, man. He's probably the smartest guy that we have in our extended family, just when you talk to him, just the way that he processes things. But got a wife now, got a kid, a second one on his way, and you know, they got this house with a white picket fence. They're pretty much like a Norman Rockwell painting, right? And he was telling me that about a year ago, he was walking with his wife and their dog, and that they're just headed down the walkway, and he froze because he saw the tree that he used to sit against, and like hit him, like the gap hit him, right? And he was like, oh my gosh, that was a place where I was hopeless, that I thought was impossible for me to ever be here. And instead of just saying, you know, this is the challenge, he just recognized all it took was for me to take one step. His one step towards Nineveh for him, his one step was to go to a meeting. His one step was to admit to somebody that it was one step into the unknown.
Right.
And then he realized, look at what God has done with my life from that point.
Wow. To think that when we trade in reluctance for trust and embrace a step of faith in God's direction, like Jonah, we can see our Ninevehs be transformed. We can see our lives transformed.
Yep.
And when we watch God make his fulfill his promises, all of a sudden, instead of 20 excuses, we have 20 examples of God being awesome.
Yep.
and showing up in our lives. That's incredible.
Yeah, that word trust is so good because when we take a step into the painful, usually we think that it's bad, but we need to trust that God doesn't have a plan to harm us. God has a plan to prosper us. That if he is begging you to step into the unknown or into the painful, it's because there's something triumphant on the other side.
That's right. Should we pray?
Let's do it.
God, we just thank you so much that you are the God of second chances. And Lord, for those of us that are feeling reluctant to take a step of faith your direction, would you fill us with that trust? Would you remind us that you are for us, that you do have plans to prosper us and not to harm us, that you give us hope in a future, and that hope in a future is better than anything we could possibly imagine. And Lord, as we take steps toward you, we just thank you for our lives being transformed, our families being transformed, our communities being transformed, our futures being transformed, that you're making this place heaven on earth. We love you so much, Jesus. Thank you. Amen.
Amen. So glad that you guys joined us this week, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.